So I went to Lake Heights this morning.
Lake Heights?
The wedding venue.
Whose wedding?
Our wedding.
What happened to Harrington's? No, what happened? You love that place.
It's nice, but
It's nice. You've been wanting to get married at Harrington since you were wearing diapers.
Whatever. Although my parents always said that it took forever to get me potty trained, so maybe.
What happened?
Promise you won't make a thing of it.
No.
It's not that big a deal.
No.
The gazebo was over 100 years old. If they install a ramp, it's gonna damage it.
I'm calling them.
Jimmy, it's not worth it.
It is. It's your wedding.
Please.
It's not fair.
No, it's not fair, but my mother's been on the phone with them for over an hour yelling. I just want to be done with it, please.
Lake Heights?
Lake Heights.
Lake Heights.
Well, that was odd, right? If one of my film students were to have turned this assignment in to me, I would have said, it's interesting, i.e. not very good, but I do have some thoughts on how we can improve it. So, let's do that today, shall we? So here I am once again completing my students' homework, and today's assignment is one that my students complete in my directing class. Like the last video, this is an assignment that they need to complete in roughly 2 hours worth of time, and the completion of this assignment will come on the heels of them learning about 4 very important concepts: the spine, objectives, tactics, and beats, which the previous version of this scene that I just showed you all but completely lacks.
Lake Heights?
Lake Heights.
Lake Heights.
So let's see if we can't go through this script and infuse those elements into this project and make it something just a little more palatable. So really what we're doing today is the script analysis process, and it is indeed so essential for you as a director to analyze your script. But I always encourage my students before beginning that analyzing, don't analyze. Just read the script. Allow your first reading to just be an experience, like you're settling into a movie theater, the lights have dimmed, and you're watching the film for the very first time. The reason being, you will only ever have one first experience with this script, and you want to preserve in amber that first reaction, those first moments of, ooh, that's interesting, ooh, that's exciting, oh, that's confusing, can I clarify that in some way? You want to be able to just respond as your audience hopefully will. Preserve those thoughts, feelings, and emotion in amber because you only get them once. So let's try and forget the beginning of this video and just experience this script for the very first time. Exterior cafe. Jimmy and Alex sit at a small table eating breakfast. Alex, who is in a wheelchair, clears her throat. So, I stopped by Lake Heights this morning. Lake Heights? The wedding venue. For whose wedding? Alex laughs. Our wedding. What happened to Harrington's? Alex shrugs. What happened to... You love that place. Alex forces a smile. It's nice, yeah, but Alex, you've been dreaming about getting married at Harrington's since you were in diapers. Whatever. Though my parents did always say it took me forever to get potty trained, so maybe. What happened? Alex smiles again, but then sighs. Just promise me you won't make a thing out of it. Jimmy gets it. No. It's not a big deal. No. The gazebo is over 100 years old. Installing a ramp could damage it. I'm calling them. Jimmy, it's not worth it. It is. It's your wedding. Please. It's not fair. No, it's not. But my mom's already spent an hour screaming at them on the phone. Please. I just want to move on. Jimmy takes a breath. Lake Heights? Lake Heights. Lake Heights. There we go. Now, you might ask, what is the point of analyzing a script like this? Why not just pick it up, glance at it, walk onto set, and begin the process? Well, I think a number of very accomplished filmmakers have a lot to say on the subject, one of them being Sidney Lumet. And he says, whoever is making the movie must interpret and understand everything. Peter Weir, the director of The Truman Show, Dead Poets Society, has this to say about script analysis. I have to eat the script. It has to become organic. It has to be part of me, as if I did write it. And if those positive sentiments aren't enough for you to buy into the importance of script analysis, allow this quote from Anthony Hopkins to scare you into it. There are directors that I watch and wonder why they get out of bed in the morning, because of the stunning lack of homework they do. So, while indeed I probably will never work with Sir Anthony Hopkins, I don't want any of my actors or any other of my collaborators to feel as if I don't know this story and these characters backwards and forwards. So I will, before the shoot, before the rehearsals, before the meetings, explore and flesh out every corner of this imaginary world. So let's start off with identifying the spine. Before we get to that, what exactly do I mean by the spine? Well, what I mean by the spine is really what your film is about. No, not the plot events, but its message, its theme, what it's trying to scream out to the world. And identifying this is oh so important because the what your film is about, should determine the how. What your film is about, what its message is, what its theme is, ought to in some way inform how you go about making it. What actors you choose to cast, how you direct those actors. Are their performances heightened or grounded? How you choose to light and frame your images. Is the camera dynamic and flashy or subdued and documentary style? So for example, a few years ago, I made a short film called The Way That I Take, and in my estimation, what that film was about, what it was trying to say to the world was, concealing our failure will only ensnare and isolate. And that determination really did dictate so much of the execution. So, as often as possible, my cinematographer and I tried to trap our characters in the frame. We had them drowning behind countertops or hemmed in by closet doors. In a similar fashion, the production design was extremely claustrophobic. We tried to stuff that location full of dirty clothes, toys, fans, just to, again, make these characters feel like they're trapped. Or in the color grade, just to communicate how hot and uncomfortable this oven of a location was, we decided to allow the color grade to move from cool to warmer to warmest over the course of the film.
What?
So now, returning to this script, I would encourage you to ask, what is the spine of this little tiny short film here? What is it really trying to say? About life, about humans, about relationships? For me personally, and again, that really is all that I can bring to the table, my personal perspective, my personal opinion, I feel like what this scene is about is how in relationships, compromise is inevitable, but can be good. Now, I would encourage you to, when you watch the final version of this scene here at the end of this video, to think about how that particular determination seemed to affect all those particular elements. It's a really interesting exercise. Next, let's talk about objectives. Why is it important to identify your character's objectives in a particular scene? Well, without them, the scene really is dead in the water. It will become like the iteration that you've already seen previously. Lifeless, dull, odd.
No.
And just so we're crystal clear, what I mean by objective is what your character wants in a particular scene. Now, I would encourage you to find objectives that are, one, achievable, something that they can actually achieve in that particular scene, and probably even more importantly, allow that objective to be connected to the other person. Because if that objective is connected to the other person, that will get your characters to lean in and want something from each other, and that's where the sparks occur, and the conflict happens, and the story is revealed. So, ask yourself, why are your characters here? What are they moving towards? Who wants what from who? Now, once you've figured out your character's objectives, the next thing to ask yourself is, what are the particular tactics that they use to go about achieving those objectives? And I should say, while the character's objectives really ought to maintain the entire course of the scene, they should have one objective, the tactics that they use can and often should change a lot, because it's interesting to watch characters try to get something in a variety of ways. So open up your script again, and go back through it, looking at every single action line, every single line of dialogue, and ask yourself, is the character's tactic, the way in which they're going about achieving their objective, changing? And if so, what is it changing to? I find it particularly helpful in this process to have next to me just a list of action verbs. Are they in this look accusing? Are they with this line attacking? Are they belittling? Are they condemning? Are they confronting? Are they demeaning? So on and so forth. Now, if any part of you just feels like, oh, this is a slog, this is dull, what's even the point of doing all of this work? Let me assure you that identifying objectives and tactics shape and color everything. And by simply altering a tactic, the same line can be used to plead,
Just promise me you won't make a big deal of it.
to joke with,
Just promise me you won't make a big deal of it.
to threaten,
Just promise me that you won't make a big deal of it.
to insult,
Just promise me you won't make a big deal of it.
And yes, I would encourage you during the pre-production process to take the time to think about multiple options for objectives and multiple options for each individual tactic. Your first, second, and third options might be less interesting than the fourth. And also, when you show up on set and your actor brings to the table something completely different, they have a different idea of what their objective is or a different idea of what a particular tactic might be, you won't be as thrown because you've already taken the time to consider multiple options. So for Alex, I came up with 3 different options for her objective. Objective 1, get Jimmy to agree with you. Objective 2, get Jimmy to admit that you're strong. Objective 3, get Jimmy to admit that you're more than your handicap. And for Jimmy, I came up with 3 different options for his objective. Objective 1, get Alex to fight for herself. Objective 2, get Alex to thank you for fighting for her. Objective 3, get Alex to fight for this relationship. So now, go back through the script and ask yourself what tactics are Jimmy and Alex using to accomplish their objectives, and where do they shift? And speaking of shifting, the last thing that we're going to talk about today that you ought to do during your script analysis process is identify the beats. What is a beat? Well, a beat is any time that your story shifts, changes, alters directions, either physically or emotionally. One of the main issues with that first iteration of this scene was the fact that it was almost completely devoid of beats. There really were no moments where we saw them physically or emotionally shift. It was just line, 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 line.
No.
And those lines in that initial iteration very clearly had little effect on shifting anything in that scene or anything in the individual characters. And that's a problem. Now, I should say, as you go through your script and identify those shifts, you are essentially, to put this in musical terms, just identifying individual notes. Identifying individual beats doesn't necessarily tell you how that beat ought to manifest itself in the finished film. Whether it ought to be an extremely drawn-out moment.
What happened?
Beat.
Just promise me you won't make a thing of it.
Beat.
No.
An extremely fast moment.
What happened?
Beat.
Promise you won't make a thing of it.
Beat.
No.
Or somewhere in the middle.
What happened?
Beat.
Just promise me you won't make a thing of it.
Beat.
No.
So again, identifying the beats is simply identifying the notes, and it's not until later that you figure out how long those beats ought to hang in a particular moment. But if you don't identify them, odds are you will miss a lot of them and have a much less dynamic and much more lifeless scene, like the iteration that we've already seen.
No.
So just for fun, let's walk through the first few lines of this scene looking for those beats, those shifts, those changes, both for the characters as well as for the audience. With that in mind, the first line of any script will be a beat, because prior to it, there was a black screen. And when we fade up and the audience sees for the first time Jimmy and Alex sit at a small table eating breakfast, the audience's understanding of this story shifts. In a similar way, when I, in the second line, read Alex, who's in a wheelchair, I will give that a beat as well, because prior to that moment, the audience was not aware that Alex was in a wheelchair, and that will produce some kind of emotional response within the audience. As an aside, I plan to save that particular revelation, that particular beat, for a bit later in my iteration of the scene. The next fairly obvious beat would be clears her throat. Prior to that moment, she wasn't clearing her throat, now she is. A shift. On Alex's first line, I'm going to put a beat between so and I. I can imagine the line being delivered like, so, I stopped by Lake Heights this morning. After saying so, something internally shifts within Alex. She finds the courage to say the rest of the line. So she moves from fear to courage. That's a beat. Lake Heights, definitely going to mark a beat there as well. Prior to his first line, Jimmy was most likely focused on the breakfast. So he shifts from enjoying his breakfast to asking Alex a question. The wedding venue, going to mark that as a beat as well, because Alex is moving from stating something to explaining something. For whose wedding? I'll give that line a beat as well. Jimmy perhaps shifting from curiosity to intrigue. And I could continue on, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea as to what I mean when I say beat. But now it's time to take another crack at this scene and see if the second iteration, where I've infused an overarching what this thing is about, given the characters their objectives, what they want from each other, given them a variety of tactics, ways in which they go about trying to achieve those objectives, and making sure that I have identified where, when, and why this scene shifts physically and emotionally. Let's try this scene one more time and see if the second iteration, with all that homework done, is just a little bit better.
So I went to Lake Heights this morning.
Lake Heights?
The wedding venue?
Oh, whose wedding?
Our wedding.
What happened to Harrington's? No, what happened? You love that place.
It's nice, yeah, but
It's nice. Look, Alex, you've been wanting to get married at Harrington since you were in diapers.
whatever. Although my parents always said that it took forever to get me potty trained, so maybe.
What happened?
Just promise me you won't make a thing of it.
No.
It's not that big a deal.
No.
The gazebo was over 100 years old. If they install a ramp, it's going to damage it.
Look, no, I'm calling them.
Jimmy, it's not worth it.
It is. It's
Please.
your wedding. It's not fair.
No! It's not. My mom just spent an hour yelling at them over the phone. Please, I just want to move on.
Lake Heights?
Lake Heights.
Lake Heights.
There you go. Not a perfect scene, but alas, certainly better than the first iteration that I showed you, and really all that came down to the fact that I identified the spine, the objectives, the tactics, and the beats. Jessica and Byron were both really great actors to work with. Bo's been a great collaborator and cinematographer. Caroline came out to do a little bit of production design, and of course, Mr. Matt was there behind the camera filming that wonderful behind the scenes. Thanks for watching, guys. This series continues to be a blast to produce. I'm learning a lot, having so much fun directing these scenes, and I cannot wait to do more with you guys. Until then, though, have a good one. Cheers.